quick, Scott. Oh, yeah. All right.
I tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
So you have to ask yourself, okay, at the beginning of the argument, is this something that can be debated? Because if it can't be debated, then it's not really an argument. If there's not an opposing side, how can it be an argument? I mean, it can be argued if it's very weak. Like, does the Earth have 2 moons? I mean, come on. That's not really a debatable, that's not a controversial issue. Yes? Yeah, it is. This when you talking about the documentary? Yeah, is fast food good for you? Some people say yes.
But everyone knows that it's a fat that's not good for you.
Well, everyone knows that maybe eating at home is better. But, a lot of people, believe me, a lot of people think fast food is the way to go. And I tell you, there's nothing wrong with it. Including, and even if it was everybody, meaning the consumer, the owners of McDonald's, nothing wrong with that.
You just ate McDonald's yesterday.
You did, after you watched that.
I couldn't eat it.
Oh, really? You thought about it? Well, I guess that's what the director wanted. Okay, all right. So this next issue, determining the author's argument. The author's argument. Once we establish that he is going to argue something that is controversial, then we need to figure out what is the author's purpose. I mean, not purpose, position. What is the author's position? Or in our case, of course, the director. But I like author because we discussed a lot dealing with Walden and his argument. And although he did make a lot of little arguments or sub-arguments, if you want to call that, he did have a main argument. And we talked a lot about what his argument is and how he was presenting his support. The whole book was a support for his argument. Okay, but if you can't establish what the position is, then that makes the argument weak also. Because if the author didn't really take a position, then he's not really presenting an argument, or he's presenting both sides. So in that case, it really wouldn't be an argument. It'd just be presenting us with some information. So, and I think yesterday we decided that his position was that it is not good for us. And as Hebo said, we already knew that, but we didn't have any proof to go with it, right? Huh?
The proofs are everywhere.
Yeah, proof said walking around everywhere. Yeah. But if you go and look in the little playland, you wouldn't find any proof. Playland, the little area where the kids play. Did you ever play in playland? You don't want to admit that you played in playland. All right, whatever. Okay. Yes. Okay. Identify the author's assumptions. Yes. What is the assumption? What is the author taking for granted here?
That everyone eats McDonald's.
Everybody eats McDonald's. Everybody thinks fast food is okay. Any other assumptions our director was making? Because that's what taking for granted, that's what an assumption is. It's basically when the author presents something, assuming that everyone either knows about the issue or has a position on the issue. And in some cases, the author is assuming that everyone's position is the opposite of his. Henry David Thoreau did that in Walden when he assumed everyone was into basically materialism or, indulgence, and that everyone assumed that makes them happy. So he took that for granted, that who he was talking to had never thought about, would the simpler things in life make us happy. So he made an assumption. He took that for granted. Yes. if the author's argument, assumptions are illogical or incorrect. So, but I guess you say his assumptions are logical. Yes? Well, I don't know. I mean, if his assumption was that everybody thinks fast food is okay, is that logical? Hello? It is. If his assumption was everyone thinks fast food is good for us, would that be a logical assumption? Oh, okay. So it wouldn't be illogical. I mean, okay. All right. Excellent. Now, I guess if he was saying that, if his assumption are, he took for granted that everyone thinks that fast food tastes nasty, I guess that wouldn't be logical. Yeah, of course. That fast food tastes nasty. Okay, yes. But you should strive to make a veggie burger taste like a quarter pounder with cheese. It's possible. I mean, anyway, okay. The types of support, because that's where we basically stopped yesterday. Types of support. What kind of evidence does he give us? Now here we're talking about evidence, obviously, that is strong, that is relevant, that is factual. You know, it's not just some made up stuff. That we're able to look at the evidence and agree that it is good evidence. And we established that he did present some evidence that was, believable. Yes. He didn't go to his buddy and have his buddy to look at him and say, you think I'm healthy? And his buddy said, yeah, you look good to me. No, he went to an actual doctor and some doctors, stuff like that. So he was at the beginning of presenting his evidence, and that's basically where we were there. But we are going to assume that in continuing his evidence, that is going to actually involve food. Yes?
Didn't he already present examples and evidence by stating facts and statistics?
Well, he was, talking about at the very beginning, he was actually presenting the lawyers for those two girls and the lawsuits, presenting their evidence. So what he was saying, well, the judges said, well, okay, I see all of this evidence. The girls overweight. They say they was eating at McDonald's every day. He said, but if you want to have a case, then you need to provide some real data about what happens to one's body when you eat fast food over a period of time. That's what they didn't have. So he was just stating what they do have. What they didn't have, this is where he is picking up. So it wasn't really his evidence, but he was saying, well, this is where my evidence is going to start. The actual data. What does it do to the body? Because that's what the judges in that lawsuit were saying they didn't have. So that's where his real information was. Okay, so we're going to go beyond this because while we continue watching the documentary, we need to know this stuff. Okay, relevance. So the relevance of the support. Now you have to decide. This is what you make this decision about whether or not the information is relevant or not. And of course, that's because you're paying attention to what is being presented. You already know the issue. You know the position of the author or director in this case. So is this evidence relevant to what he's doing? And that's does it relate directly? Now, unless the author or the director in this case is an expert, then we are going to have to hold that person to a higher degree in the evidence. Now, if the person was an expert, nutritionist or something like that, we would hold them to hold the bar lower to the evidence they present, because we just assume that, they've been studying this all their lives, so they know this stuff. But when a person is not an expert, we have to hold them to a higher, have the bar higher for them. Because just because you're telling me it's not going to work, because I know you're not some specialist in that field. So we need for you to come with the really strong evidence stuff, and it definitely needs to be related. Even if it was a nutritionist, the nutrition could go off on some other stuff that's not even really related, and that still would be satisfactory to us. Yes. Okay. Now, biasness. Is the author biased? Is the author biased? Meaning that is the author presenting the information in a very one-sided way, or is the author objective? Yes. Does the author present clear information as evidence? Or is it very, it's like leading you to something without giving you all the information, showing you one statistic without showing you all of the statistics? Then in that case, that's not going to be a good argument, because it's too, the author then is taking for granted the reader's intelligence level. And we're now just being manipulated. It becomes propaganda then. It doesn't become like some serious study where the author wants you to actually convince you. It just becomes propaganda, and you're supposed to sit there and just, believe it all. And no. That's not a good argument. And that's not presenting a good argument. So you have to ask yourself that question. Are the facts and examples clear? Or are you seeing everything? Or are you just seeing a little bit? Now, as an educated person, you're supposed to be able to do that. This is why you become educated. Not only to make money, but you also become educated so nobody can fool you. So you can't be fooled easily. Then you look and say, See, you're able to say, wait a minute. You're not giving me everything. You're just showing me what you want to show. Okay. Then that brings us to this next thing, which is the completeness of the argument. Because if the author is being biased, if the author is not making the evidence clear, then obviously the argument is not complete. The only way you can make an argument complete is that you also mention the other side of the equation. You have to mention the other side. But you mention the other side to support your position. Now, you don't have to mention the other side in the beginning, although you can do it like that. Most authors, when they write an argumentative type of writing, they either mention the opposing side at the end or towards the end when you're coming to some kind of conclusion, or throughout as a way to support what you're saying. But when you leave the opposing side out, then your argument becomes weak, because obviously the reader knows that there's an opposing side. It's a controversial issue, obviously. It is. Now, the previous step was showing the evidence one-sided, right? Not all, like one statistic instead of all of the statistics. This happened, all of these things happened, in this percentage this year, but you're not talking about the years before, the years after. And I'm supposed to assume that, everything's bad because all this happened. But maybe it happened less that year, or less the year before. So in the previous step, you have to show all of it. Here, you're not mentioning the opposing side at all. Even if you show the evidence of the opposing, you don't mention the other side. You just don't mention it. You show the evidence, but you don't talk about it. You don't deal directly with the opposing side. And that is not a good. So you have to ask yourself this question. Is the author's argument complete? Sometimes an author will leave out some information intentionally to help their position. But that's not good arguing. Good arguing is you keep it all in and let the reader decide. Because if your position is strong, then you're not worried about it. Why would you be worried? They're going to agree with me anyway because my position is strong. Okay. Now, a valid argument. Now here we're talking about an argument that is logical. Okay? That is logical and well thought out. It's not like an attack. An invalid argument is just simply an attack. Just attacking. No, this ain't good. Get these people over here. No, that's not a valid argument. A valid argument is well reasoned. You tell the because, and you explain the why, and you give all the information that the reader needs to, make the same decision or come to the same conclusion that you came to. So we're not just talking about attacking. Is he attacking the fast food industry? Did you feel like he was attacking? You don't think so? Just presenting some, okay. All right. So he just started saying, I hate this stuff. Look at this. No, he didn't do all that. He's trying to be unbiased. Yes. Just like Henry David Thoreau, if you notice, especially like in the chapter Solitude, after that he came with the chapter Visitors. He talked about him in the woods, but then he talked about him in the town. He talked about the people in the town, and he talked about, how he enjoyed being alone in the woods. So he just didn't attack people who like to be social. Like maybe he didn't like socialites, people who like, to always be in the midst of society. He didn't attack them. He said, I like that. That's, they have their strong points, but this Solitude has its strong points also. So his argument was valid and well-reasoned. Well-reasoned can also be the organization of the argument. Credible. Is the argument credible? Obviously, we're talking about, is the argument believable in that good points are being made, good evidence is being shown. Now we're getting into a more general look at the argument. A more general look at the argument. Now, believable here can also mean, is the author, injecting some untruths. So, in our documentary, the director is being pretty transparent as to how he's going to come to some conclusions. He's sitting with the doc. He showed us the test he went through, but then he didn't cut it off there and go to something else without talking about the results. So he showed the results they were giving him. Oh, your blood is this, your sugar is that, blah, 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 your cholesterol is that. So he didn't cut that part out. So it wouldn't have been really believable if he would have left that part out and then came back to that after eating fast food a long time, and then they telling him he pulling a fast one on us. No. Yes. So, and that actually doing that makes it convincing. Is the author's argument believable? That is the question that we have to ask. Yes. Credibility. In addition to, not showing us half of the results. Also, the people involved in getting the results. And I'm talking about the documentary here. They were doctors, so they are credible. They are very credible. As a way to, as an instrument of creating evidence. And in Walden, His argument is credible because he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. He went and lived in the woods. He built the house. He did all that. So, his stuff is credible because of that. Okay, so now, when evaluating, remember the following, and these are just tips for you to write down. Yes, 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 and yes. Now, obviously, when you're trying to evaluate an argument, there's no way for you to remember everything. And if you're taking notes, like you're doing in here, there's no way to write down everything. So don't only look at or only focus on those things which you really think are important. Don't overwhelm yourself. Definitely watch out for bias. Watch out for biases. You don't want to be, you want to detect when an author, or in our case a director, is being biased to whatever the issue is. But also, don't hold the standard so high that it's impossible for the author to prove their position. So you don't want to say, they don't have to be absolutely 120% right all the time on everything. And if it's one thing that they're wrong on, no way can it be with us. As a reader, as a viewer, we can't do that either. So we have to actually, be realistic. No one is perfect. Maybe that'll probably be a good way to just put in parentheses after this right here. No one is perfect. No one is perfect. So don't expect the author, the director to be perfect. But everything else that we mentioned has to be there, and this has to be there. Well presented, well reasoned, organized, credible, valid, unbiased, so forth and so on. The issue from the beginning has to be something that can be argued, and the thing or the assumptions that the author makes has to be assumptions that make sense also. Okay? So all of that is in place, and we can say, okay, the author did, or the director did a pretty good job. And that's going to kill it for us with that. So we got 15 minutes. Bam! This is an Islamic school. We'll talk about tomorrow.
That's rolling the hard way. We don't want to roll quite that hard. We want to get one of them little mini buses.
What's up?
Tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
Everybody's gone out of their mind.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class. Welcome to Mr. Quick's class. Welcome, Mr. Quick's class.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right.
So, what are you going to use to support your position? Walden and the documentaries we're watching. That's it. If you include anything, Ali, okay, pretend like you're going to do this. Anything else, I will deduct. There will be no personal experience, no fictional made-up stuff about your astronaut uncle named Ahmed. There won't be anything like that on this essay exam. Okay? All the information I've been giving you, and you should have in your notebooks. So what you need to be doing is studying that information so that you can give me some detailed examples on the essay exam. That's what you should be doing. No, Miss Jadan, you're not going to take pictures. You're going to take notes. This is not Mr. Quick's photography class. Thank you for coming when you feel like it. Thank you for coming to class. All right. Yes. All in all, your argument must be clear. It will be clear because you will use factual information. It will be clear because you followed the writing process that I taught you. It will be clear because you took good notes when you watched the documentaries, when you read the book. You paid attention when we went over the various chapters in class, so forth and so on. Thus, you will be able to present a clear argument. As I said before, each of you will have different questions. So you will have a special question for you that may not be for your buddy. So it'll be all on you. Raise your hand quietly if you have a question. Whoa, you just missed it. No, Mr. Singh. Welcome, Miss Bissan. Okay, well, that means we need to talk a little bit more about the extended writing process, the extended discussion, and I guess the only other thing we need to talk about is, yes, your argument. And let's talk about it. Okay, evaluating an author's argument. We're going over this for two reasons. Number one, because you need to improve your ability to take a reading passage test. And number two, because you need to prepare yourself for the essay exam. So two reasons we're going over this. So I need for you to pay attention. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, basically, when an author takes a position on the issue, obviously the author is presenting some type of argument. So basically, that's what we mean when we call presenting an argument. You have to do it when you write. An author does it. It's something they write. By watching Mr. Yusuf. Welcome. Okay, so we're all here. All right, so let us begin. Arguing. What is an issue? Something a little more serious than that, like the death penalty, gun control, should students come to class on time, those various issues that, can be argued. Stuff like that, So, obviously, you have to ask yourself this question. If you didn't get that question when I had it up there, you might want to get it now. Is the author writing about a controversial issue? Is it something that can be argued? If it's not something that can be argued, this may be the beginning of a really bad argument. Because if you can't take a position on it, like the author has taken a position on it, it's probably not a good argument. Or it's probably not an argument